Hello, everyone. I'm Jennifer Shane. I hold the W.A. Klinger Chair at Iowa State University, which makes me the professor in charge of our construction engineering program. And I am also the director of the Construction Management and Technology program at the Institute for Transportation, also at Iowa State University. I'm here today to talk to you about a project or a tool that was developed as part of a project with the Minnesota Department of Transportation and the local roads research board. And this tool is for fleet life cycle management and to help it's a decision tool to help local agencies make decisions about when to replace or how to maintain different pieces of equipment within their fleets. It also will help them, fleet managers, in addition to making these decisions, help others, like let's say a city council or other board or other people within the office, about how they're making these decisions and why they're making the decisions that they're making. So this tool was developed as part of a research program, like I mentioned. There is a research report that is available through the Minnesota DOT and the local roads research board that describes all the information and the background that went into the development of this tool. And you can look there for more information. But today I'm just going to focus on the tool itself, which is an Excel-based tool. And I'm going to walk through it, and I'm going to talk about it, and then I'm going to walk through a couple of examples as I go later on also. So bear with me, and we'll get through it all, and we'll go through it a couple times just to see how it all works. My cursor in doing this may appear a little larger or different than what your cursor normally does, and I do this on purpose to help try to track along with where I'm clicking and what I'm doing, but yours should appear normal when you're using this tool. So we have 4 tabs in this tool. We have a home tab, a data entry tab, an output tab, and a portable data entry tab. And I'll walk through each of these, and then we'll go back and do a couple of examples. So on our home tool, our home tab, sorry, we have information about filling out the other tabs and what appears on the other tab. So on the home tab, we have the instructions here. We will be using 3 different colors on the data entry tab that will help us understand kind of where we have to put information and what type of information we have to put in. The yellow color will indicates a drop-down list that we need to select something from. Green is where we need to enter a value as instructed, and the salmon or orange color is where we may or may not have to enter information, but only appears when we do need to enter information because of something we picked, maybe in a yellow or a green cell. The outputs will appear on the output tab, and we have a couple of outputs that appear on that tab, and I'll definitely show them to you, but it includes the parameters that were used in the analysis. It includes a table that displays the analysis. It will talk about the years and the costs and that kind of thing. And then we have a couple of graphs that put that information into a graphical format that will show our annual and ownership cost and our operating cost, as well as a graph that shows our total equivalent uniform annual cost, which is basically taking our costs but spreading it out annual or evenly over and uniformly over the life of the project. Or sorry, not the project, the tool, the piece of equipment. So what we have also, there is a chance that you will receive an error message while you are doing the data entry. And that's simply because the calculation is running all the time and maybe it's missing some piece of information. So just click OK if that pops up, and then you can, as you fill out the rest of the information, that error will go away because you will input the data it needs actually to calculate to complete the analysis, to do the calculation for you. So the error message should go away just as you're going through if you do encounter an error message. So that's our home tab. Move to the data entry tab. On the data entry tab, we have some information here. We will look at our piece of equipment first, and then we can either we'll work on purchase versus lease and information will show up there. Again, as we're working through this, you can see there were different colored cells here. There's also a pop-up box that'll tell you what kind of information there is needed, as well as some information in the notes about what the different selections mean, as well as what type of information should be entered into the value cell. So our first piece of information that we're going to need is our equipment type. Here there is a selection menu. You can pick either a pickup truck, a motor grader, a tractor, a loader, an excavator, or a snowplow. When doing this research, we were asked not to do all types of equipment because there were just maybe too many, but really to focus in on these select 6 pieces of equipment and that were the most readily available or used or the most agencies had. So you may have other pieces of equipment, but this analysis is really only for these pieces of equipment. So in this, you would pick your piece of equipment in this drop-down menu here, and it would change if we were to change our selection here. So you just simply click on this arrow and make your selection. Next, we go down to our analysis mode. Here we have another drop-down menu where we can have a conservative or a non-conservative analysis. A conservative analysis looks at maybe a shorter useful life, higher interest rates, more severe economic conditions, whereas a non-conservative analysis assumes a more favorable conditions for your analysis. So lower interest rates, good economic conditions, etc. Next, we will go to our maintenance effort, and we will look at our drop-down menu. For maintenance, we have 3 different options: high, low, and moderate. Again, we can look over at the notes section here to see what kind of information we're entering, which is a drop-down, and then we can look at what each of these means. So a high maintenance selection represents a severe service level or more reactive maintenance. Moderate represents kind of standard, and low maintenance represents more highway miles or more preventative types of maintenance. So you can make that selection. Next, we go down to our tire repair frequency. Here we have, again, 3 options: high, moderate, and low. And again, in our notes, we see that high represents a lot of replacement, a lot of seasonal replacement, tires that need to be replaced often because they encountered more hazards, etc. Moderate is a normal replacement, and low maybe is a vehicle we don't use very often, or it just seems to have fewer encounters and requires less maintenance or fewer tires. Next, we pick our fuel type. We can have 3 different types of fuel here. We have gas, diesel, or EV. We do recognize that some vehicles are electric that are within your fleets, so we also included that in our analysis. There is a note over here that if you select electric, then you need to also later on select the fuel consumption field differently than what you would as a gas or a diesel vehicle. The final piece of this section is our fuel selection price. We have 4 different options here. We have high, moderate, low, and custom. Again, we can look over to our notes to see what each of these mean. A low would be 2 to 3 gallons, dollars per gallon for either gas or diesel, or maybe 0 or a nickel per kilowatt hour. Moderate would be a little higher with 3 to 4 gallons or dollars per gallon, or approximately 14 cents per kilowatt hour, or high would be over $4.50 per gallon or more than 26 cents per kilowatt hour. If you don't like any of those ranges, then you can also put a custom number in here. And if you select custom, then you need to enter that fuel price later on in this data sheet. Next, we go to our annual usage. This is where now we need to look at not just a value, but we also need to select the appropriate units. Up above, we only had to select our value. Now we're getting into where we actually have to enter numbers as represented by the green, and then also select the units that we're going to be using. So green, if you remember, is where we need to enter a value, not just select from a drop-down menu. So first up, we have our estimated annual usage. Here we would put in a value, and we would also need to select from the drop-down menu the appropriate units. So some of the equipment is analyzed based on hours, so that would be your tractors, graders, etc., and then or miles, which would be more representative of your uh, maybe your snowplow trucks, but for sure your pickup trucks. So you need to select the appropriate unit for the type of vehicle you're using, and then also what your value is here. Next, we go to our fuel consumption here. This is where we would enter our fuel usage as a value. And then we also need to pick if we're selecting miles per gallon or if we're doing the equivalent for our EV vehicle. So if you remember up above where we were talking about fuel type, we had our options. And if we entered EV, we had the note that in our fuel consumption field, we needed to select the equivalent fuel consumption type or unit. So that would be this box right here, where we need to make sure we recognize we're still talking about an EV vehicle. Or an EV, I guess, an electric vehicle. Next would be our custom fuel price. If you remember up here, we had to select our fuel price selection. If we can pick high, moderate, or low, but if we enter custom, then this changes to a salmon color, meaning that we need to enter a value. If we leave this as high, moderate, or low, then that is no longer salmon and we don't have to enter a number. So we only enter a number here if it's salmon based on our fuel price selection as being custom. We also need to enter our fuel usage per year, but again, this is just dependent on one of our selections up above. That's why it's a salmon color. So if we are talking about a tractor or a road grader, some piece of equipment that we're analyzing that's based on hours, then we also need to enter our fuel because that is an operating cost for us that needs to be figured into the calculation. If we are doing this analysis based on miles, then we do not need to enter the number of gallons that we are using per year because we get that information based off of our fuel consumption and our number of miles that we use per year. It figures the calculation for us. Next, we would go down to we have some other price costs here. We have insurance and other miscellaneous costs. That might be parking, wash, bays, whatever other miscellaneous costs you have. This you put in for dollars in the unit of dollars per year. And then we also have the price for a full set of tires here. Tires can be much more expensive for some of the pieces of equipment we're talking about here. So that price is figured separately and differently than for the piece of equipment. So we consider the price for the equipment without the tires, and then we calculate the tires in separately. So this is where you would need to enter in the price per year for one full set of tires. So if you have a set of tires that last multiple years, you take that price divided by the number of years that they might last, and you put that value in here. Next, we get into if we are purchasing or leasing this vehicle. So is it a purchase or lease? We choose from our drop-down menu. Since it's yellow, we can say purchase. If we leave it purchase, then our next two cells are green for those values. Or if we say lease, then we still need to enter the green, but then we also need to address the salmon colored. as well. So purchase or lease, we put in our year of acquisition, that starts our year zero, our list price or how much we paid for the piece of equipment without the tires. That's a big note here. What did it cost without the tires? Because remember, those are figured separately. If we're leasing the vehicle, then we also need to go down here and enter our down payment, our monthly lease payment, our lease term and number of years, and our buyout price for the piece of equipment. So that takes us through our data entry tab. Our next tab is our output tab here. And this will show us several different types of information. It won't show as much right now just because I didn't enter all that information on the previous tab, but in our examples, it will definitely show us more information here, or where we can actually look at it. We have first our calculated parameters. This will tell you what the variables were within the calculation. We also have a table that shows our life cycle analysis. It'll have number of years, the year, which will be generated based off of your year of acquisition, repair and maintenance year cost, residual value, your annualized operating cost, annualized ownership cost, a unit cost per mile or per hour, and then your equivalent uniform annual cost. And this will show you where's the optimum time to replace. But right now it just shows up as kind of an error because we don't have any information in there. We also have a couple of charts on here. Again, these aren't going to show as much information right now because we don't have information in our data entry. But this would show us our cost for our annual ownership and operating costs. This would have three different lines. One would be our ownership cost. We would have our operating cost, and your ownership cost will likely go down and might have a little curve to it. Operating costs will probably be increasing because it costs more as the vehicle gets older, requires more oil, and efficiencies get less, so it actually costs more to operate. And then total cost, which is the sum of our ownership and operating costs. That will be shown on this graph. And then below this graph, we will also have a graph showing our uniform annual cost, and it'll show us that uniform cost, and it also show us our optimum replacement year as a vertical line here. The graph above this will also have a vertical line showing us our optimum replacement year as well. As you're going through this, I would suggest that you make sure to go up here and file save as, and change the name based on the piece of equipment you're analyzing, so that you can always go back and reference this as you're going through. Need to put that caveat in here because I don't want you all to accidentally not save it and then try to recreate it later on. So that's where you would go do that. Again, that's file and save. It's a standard Excel for all of that. Our last tab is our printable data entry tab. This was developed as on request of the panel. They felt that sometimes the person doing the analysis doesn't always have all the information, so it would be beneficial to be able to print out the options on the data entry tab so that they could ask someone else to provide some of that information, or maybe a couple people to provide some information. So this printable data entry tab is a tool for someone to use to go out, print this page, and then maybe they need to go talk to their maintenance person or maybe a finance person about how much it costs for insurance or what have you. So this is an option for you. Again, it has the exact same information that is on the data entry tab. It's just all shown in the cells. So if you remember, we had the drop down menu where we selected our vehicle type, or our equipment type, that's what's here, our analysis mode, and it's the same notes that are over here as well. So there's it's all the same information. It's just in an easy to print format so that you could ask someone to provide that information and then you can bring it back and actually manually put it into this data entry tab. So that is the purpose of this tab for you. Again, make sure you're saving as you're going through, and I will walk through a couple of examples for you here. There is no information that we need to input on our home tab for our examples. Again, it's great reference for if you forget what the colors mean or what have you, or maybe what the outputs mean. And where you can find additional information. Again, this was a Minnesota Department of Transportation contract along with the local roads research board contract. So research report is out there. We're going to jump to the data entry where we're going to go run through a couple of analysis. Again, on the home tab, if you have questions about the colors of the cells or what those mean, you can go back and reference there, or you can look at the information on the comments that are displayed in each tab, as well as the notes section includes information. So for my first example, I want to talk about a pickup truck. We're going to have a conservative analysis that we're going to do. Our maintenance level, I'm going to say, is just moderate maintenance. Tire repair, we'll go with moderate. We will be running a gas vehicle, or we'll do a gas vehicle for this one. Our price selection, our fuel price, we'll say is moderate over the life of this pickup truck. We will be using this pickup truck about 10,000 miles every year. And again, remember, we have to select the appropriate units. In this case, we're doing miles. In our fuel consumption, we will say we are getting 16 miles per gallon. We don't need to enter in our custom fuel price because we selected one of the one of the options up above. We're okay with that range. And since we are using our miles and miles per gallon, the formula can calculate out the amount of fuel that we use in this vehicle each year. We also look at our insurance cost, the other costs associated with this vehicle, and maybe it is $500 a year, and a price for a full set of tires. We shouldn't really have to replace its tires every year, given our mileage for the pickup truck. So let's say we're only actually spending $100 per year, or we could say $75 per year on the tires. We're going to purchase this vehicle instead of lease, and this is something that we own. We acquired it in 2018, and maybe we paid $60,000 for this vehicle, this pickup truck. We have no other cells that we need to enter information in for since we purchased it, so we can go to our output tab. On our output tab, again, we start with our calculated parameters here. So these are the variables that were included in the analysis. Then we go down to the table where it will provide us the year of ownership. So remember, we purchased it in 2018, so our first year is 2019. It gives us our repair maintenance cost, our residual cost, how much that vehicle is still worth. We did use straight line depreciation. That is what we found most, or I'll say most of the agencies that we talked to, they were using straight line depreciation. So it is a step down the same amount every year. We have our annualized operating cost, ownership cost, and then the unit cost per mile, as well as our equivalent uniform annual cost in a table format. Again, this will show us that year that we should probably replace that vehicle, or when we're at the minimum year for that piece of equipment in the table format. We also have a couple of graphs here. The top graph shows us our annual ownership and operating cost. Again, our ownership cost is going to be this blue line here that's in the middle in this case, and it will be how much it costs for us to own this piece of equipment over its lifetime. We have our operating costs, so this is how much it's estimated in fuel, in oil, in tire repairs, everything else that may go into this, and that will increase over time. And then we have our total ownership cost, which is the sum of, or sorry, our total cost, which is the sum of our ownership cost and our operating cost. And that is displayed on this top line. We do have this line that shows us our optimum year for replacement. That is where the total cost is at its minimum point here. We also can see down here our equivalent uniform annual costs. So how much our piece of equipment cost if it's over the broken down over equivalently over the numbers of the years of ownership here. And again, that is at a minimum at this where this red line shows us here. So this is what I could use if I was a fleet manager to make some decisions about how long should we keep this vehicle. It maybe we're not looking at this optimum year here. Maybe we want to start looking at where does the operating costs really start to increase for us on this piece of equipment. And actually it's around here. It seems a pretty good linear line. It's not quite linear, but a good line where those costs start to really increase for us. Say I want to look at another piece of equipment, I would make sure I go and save this, and I would probably change the file name so it said something about however that piece of equipment is, that pickup truck was evaluated or recognized. All right, for our second example, I want to take a look at a different type of equipment. We've taken a look at a pickup truck. Let's take a look at what a loader would look like, maybe. I'm not going to walk through each piece of equipment, but we'll just take a look at maybe a couple different, or this is my second example, and then I think you all can figure it out from here, because it hopefully is pretty self-explanatory. So this time we're going to take a look at a loader. This time maybe we'll say a non-conservative. We will be using this in different situations. So maybe it still is a moderate effort, a maintenance effort for us. We have some people that take pretty good care of their equipment, that type of thing. But maybe they do have to run into some higher need for repair, tire repair. These are diesel usually, and we're going to have let's say we have a high cost for our diesel over the life of this vehicle. Since we are talking about a loader and we're not talking about something that gets measured in miles, we're going to take a look at hours, which you saw down below meant we also need to put in the fuel that we need for this loader as well. So we are going to be talking about hours, and let's say we're going to be using this 800 hours over the course of the year. We have, again, we're going to have miles per gallon, even though we're doing this in years. Let's say we get 10 miles per gallon in our loader. And we don't need a custom fuel price because we selected that we had a higher fuel price up above. Fuel usage per year, let's say we use 800 gallons per year. Our cost for insurance and other things that we need to put into this maybe is a little different for this piece of equipment. But a full set of tires definitely costs more than for a pickup truck. Hopefully we don't have to replace these every year, but they still cost much more. So I'm going to throw in a number here because I'm not sure what, I know they're much more expensive, but hopefully we can get more than a year out of, we can get several years out of them, even though they do cost much more. Maybe we'll increase that a little bit here. Again, we are going to purchase this, but let's say we're going to purchase this equipment in a future date, or maybe when you're viewing this training, it's current date or past date. But at this point, I'm saying it's a future date for us. We are going to pay $250,000 for this piece of equipment, and we are going to, since we're purchasing it again, we'll go check out our output tab here. And again, I may not have put in some accurate information, so this may look a little skewed, but we will see our calculated parameters here. We will have the table that includes our same information. And again, we are depreciating this out using straight line depreciation. And we will check out our years, our annual ownership costs here. And again, we're looking at where's it the lowest. Again, maybe you don't, and I understand I may have put in some values that are not realistic here, but maybe year 4, there's not much of a difference between year 4 and say year 6. So maybe year 6 is a better year to take a look at this, but after year 6 is when it really starts to increase for us. So maybe we hold on to this piece of equipment a little bit longer than we had than this tells us. This just tells us kind of when the optimum or when that lowest price gets hit, or lowest cost, excuse me. And then we can see where maybe it really starts to increase. This we could use to help maybe tell a board, look, we could hold on to this piece of equipment a little bit longer, but afterwards, after a certain point, it just really starts to cost us more to maintain this piece of equipment than it's worth. So, or maybe not that it's worth, it's still worth something because these two lines never cross on this graph. Sometimes they do. And in that case, it would cost more to operate it than it's worth. And so, there might be some different decisions based on that. But again, this is entirely just to help fleet managers make some decisions about when they want to purchase a piece of equipment, maybe how to maintain it and how to run that piece of equipment, and help justify some of those decisions for themselves and for others. So hopefully this helps. Again, uh, there are a lot of different ways you can play around with this. Maybe see what works the best. Maybe this, maybe some of my values are lower or higher than what they should be here, or um, maybe you need to take a look at how different things impact your the outputs here. So you can play around with that. But again, I would not play around with it too much in terms of, I would be honest with how I plan on maintaining a piece of equipment, how much it actually costs me, because that's the only way this is really going to give you an honest answer about it. So I hope you have found this helpful in using this tool. And again, there is the research report out there if you need additional information. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.